want to be on your own
You're
side.
live on YouTube.
Please, what's my side again?
For paying for their crimes.
They should pay for their crimes. Interesting.
Innovation, convenience,
We're live already.
or just simple
Thank you.
service as designed just
Thank you.
Yeah, we thought you might like all of that and more.
Thank you very much. Did you see those things I sent you?
Back for you.
Yeah, luck me.
Of your daily experiences.
That's the case, then I'm good. Who is
Luckily,
against
you
this?
just speak for what speaking for.
And how to get you to the
Okay,
next
okay, I get what you mean.
Yeah, for you guys, for both, it's just for both of you. What I wrote there is just for
with
both
our
of you.
business concierge.
When we
on
thought that
0700 77 684 387.
Thank you.
Or email businessconcierge at
Devo Corey,
providenceband.com to switch to a
Mumbai.
feature
please give me
phone
a
banking
brief
experience.
esquire of you.
Is it a square?
Please,
I
now.
like
I'm
that.
public analyst. End of story.
We know you're listening.
I finished from Ansaruddin
Of clear signal.
University.
You finished your answer already? Ha ha ha. Very funny.
Ice, are you here on a permanent basis? Okay.
What up? Your eyes look like yesterday. Hey, what's up? Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I bring this?
Igbo Korean. Or how will I describe you?
Public analyst.
Lagosian.
You look sleepy. Bele?
Thank you. Studio is live. Mics are up. Hiya. There we go.
This is Smooth 98.1 Love Music, Love Life, and we are talking Lagos in Lagos Talks 981. Today's edition is a special one. We've termed this the big debate. I am Ayo Mairo Essay.
Good morning, and I'm Valentine Ohu.
If you're watching us or if you're listening to us on the road or at home, you can watch us as well on YouTube, youtube.com. Search for Smooth 981 FM Lagos.
Yep. You can also send messages through WhatsApp to 0809 444 0981. But primarily, please call 01448991.
Now, for today's conversation, we have two debaters. We're going to be debating a topic that we touched on yesterday during Freshly Pressed 91 and Lagos Talks 91. But today we want to bring some analysis to it and positions of conversation. Now, you are permitted or you're allowed to take on whichever position you feel best suits your idea or ideology on this. But we want to really have a critical conversation around this to provoke thought and hopefully arrive at a conclusion or arrive some sort of conclusion. It's a topical one, and the topic today is going to be: should terrorists be pardoned and rehabilitated or made to pay for their crimes? Only yesterday we reported the story of how over 1,000 terrorists, both men and women, had said to have surrendered or put down their guns and come out to say that they were willing to be taken in by the military and the state to be rehabilitated and hopefully reintegrated back into society once they'd gone through the process. So this was also said to have been as a part of the efforts of the military, Nigerian military, to stop Boko Haram, and since they were winning this war, the terrorists were coming out to surrender. And if they did that, they'd be given some form of amnesty. So we thought we should have this conversation today. And to debate this, we have Devo Okorie, whom you just heard his voice during Freshly Pressed 91. Devo is analyst here on Smooth 98.1 and also comment on issues in Nigeria. Good morning, Devo. Thanks again for joining us.
Good morning, Lagos.
We also have Oyeyemi Emmanuel Aderigbibe. Oyeyemi Aderigbibe is a lawyer with prowess in ethics, compliance, corporate law, employment law. She's the current chairman of the Young Lawyers Committee of the Section of Business Law of the Nigerian Bar Association. She is going to be speaking passionately on this issue. Speaking for consequences, real consequences, yes? And Devo is speaking against it and saying, that this really you're speaking for all the consequences. Devo is speaking against the consequences, saying that they should be pardoned and rehabilitated. Devo, correct?
No, that's there's a place for
Mm.
amnesty.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're saying that, so in effect what Valentine just mentioned, only that you're going to qualify your stance, and
Yes.
which of course AEM is going to qualify as well. I don't know who wants to go first. Perhaps let's ask Devo. Would like to hear your thoughts. So you're standing with the amnesty option provided to terrorists in Nigeria who come forward to say that, you know what, they almost like a sort of repentance from their ways. Please state your point.
Okay, and I want to state my points with people being mindful of what is being said. Just like you've mentioned that terrorists who came forward and said they want to be taken in, it doesn't actually happen like that. Two, it's neither on their own terms, it's on the terms set by the government. Now, amnesty, clemency, some of these words that we keep hearing are opportunities granted by a constitutional government to a warring or a defaulting side as a means of trying to find, some level of peace or parity. Now, in this instance, we've heard amnesty being used with the agitators in the Niger Delta, if you remember. We heard it again being used with the Boko Haram insurgents, etc. Now, what happened, let's speak to the Boko Haram issue, was that a counterterrorism or counterinsurgency measure was employed by the Nigerian government, okay, and other affected neighboring states like Chad, Niger, and Cameroon to achieve some level of peace, okay. Now, this came with the insistent, almost decade-long killings, displacements, disruptions, attacks that have been taking place within this time space, all right? And it seemed as if the kinetic efforts, okay, the counterterrorism efforts were not yielding the results that they're expecting. Hence, they adopted, okay, a counterinsurgency option, which was referred to as Operation Safe Corridor. That's OSC in 2016. All right, this approach was meant to rehabilitate and to bring in repentant, low-risk fighters and reintegrate them back into society. Now, get the point. Repentant, low risk. So it's not as if you bring in some of the captains of the insurgents and say, okay, since you've surrendered, I'm going to abdicate your or acquit you of the crimes that you have committed. Now, in doing this, they would go through some certain processes, etc., to get them back to the point whereby they are useful and productive citizens of our country. Now, obviously, this has come against a lot of opposition because many feel that the resources put into this should have been better put to those who have suffered the outcomes or the IDPs, even the areas, properties, and persons that have been lost in this crime. However, the operative word here and what usually defines the validity of the amnesty granted to low-risk repentant insurgents is the timeline. Okay, if you remember the past chief of ANSOP before his death, I think that was Atahiru, he gave a timeline that in some certain areas, before we come out full haul, before we take a full attack on these places and wipe you out as punishment for these crimes, we will give you a timeline to surrender. So it's not an open ticket that anytime you like, you wake up and you just come and you put up placards and say, I'm ready to surrender. No, it is not. It must be applied judiciously. It must be applied within proper moral judgment, or else not only will it be abused, it will smack on proper moral judgment of whoever's administering
Thank you
it.
for your opening statement. I forgot to add that you'd have opening statements, and then after which you can then counter what each person has said. So I'd like Oyeyemi to give her opening statement before responding to the points that Devo has made, and then both of you can counter, and then we'll open the phone line.
Okay. So I like to take it from this perspective, because when you try to understand problems, you should go to the root of it. Before we talk about terrorism, we should look at what started what we know as Boko Haram and terrorism today. And it's on record that really it's an economic thing, right? It started as an economic issue where you had what's it called, nomadic cattle rearers have their cows and stuff either taken or stolen, and then they didn't have money, and they were being arrested by, in some cases, state actors, and they were asked to give money and things like that. And then there was retaliation on their part, and they saw an opportunity when the retaliation resulted in some economic opportunity for them to take assets from people, land, cattle, etc. And then they moved from assets to people. They moved from people to representatives of government. Then it became, because the northern region was a peaceful region. Let's not forget, it's not like we woke up and like we've been fighting the war since. It was actually one of the, it was largely peaceful, right? So it started as an economic issue. And then, of course, with the growth of terrorism outside Nigeria as well, in the Sahel region, globally as well, with ISIS and all of that, when they came up, they had a model that they could augment their strategy on. And of course, we have stories of how some of them, even their leaders, got trained. They left Nigeria, went to different parts of the Middle East, got trained, got source war, what's called armory and all of that, and brought that home, right? But before all of that started, it was really an economic issue. Really, someone went to take something that didn't belong to him. Someone went to using threats and the force of harm to bully people and harm people. Let's take that conversation outside the north. Does that happen every day in the east, in the west, even in normal life? What is the consequence for that kind of action on a normal day? There are armed robbers sitting in jail on end without even being charged, right? What they did is exactly what has been done in the north. So is it that a situation or the location of a crime gives the crime or the criminal a better advantage? Is that the message from the state? Those are, for me, the issues when we have this conversation. Let's move on from that. Okay, it's full blown on war now. It's no longer just an economic issue. It's no longer people just taking assets and people. You have Boko Haram planting flags and saying that this territory is now it's swap territory. It's no longer a Nigerian state. People need to pay tax. How long, is a state going to sit and watch that happen? How many more regions need to be conquered? And we've had amnesty applied as a solution at different times. In 2019, over 893 Boko Haram, low combatant members, right, were reintegrated or alleged to be reintegrated and de-radicalized and all of that. They confessed, all of those things. What has that brought us? We see an aggravation. So when you look at that situation, the response we had before was, grant amnesty. We've granted amnesty before. In fact, last year there was a law that was proposed at the National Assembly that passed first reading that was supposed to be seeking to de-radicalize.
That's true.
And where did that take us?
Yeah.
We haven't. So for me, and when I go to all of this, through all of these things, I go back to what does the Terrorism Act say? Because there is a Terrorism Prevention Act say. That's the law, right? The Terrorism Prevention Act has provisions on all of these things. And there are two main actors in that law. There's the Office of the National Security Advisor, and there's the Office of the Attorney General. There are two aspects of the conversation: the military strategy and the justice strategy.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that conversation happen in a coordinated way. So before we start even saying, amnesty is a solution, we haven't even the state hasn't used its full power.
Right.
The state hasn't deployed the resources appropriately. 3.7 trillion naira, all squandered, literally.
All right. Thank you very much for your opening statements, Devo. And we speaking to our topic of conversation today. We need to go on a break. When we come back, we hope to hear your counter argument, and then we open the phone line to hear from the audience.
If you just joined us, the topic of discussion is: should terrorists be pardoned and rehabilitated or made to pay for their crimes? Stay with us here on Smooth Breakfast. It's back.
This topic, don't be out.
Eh?
This topic is not it.
Is this how it's supposed to work?
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
It's
that's
supposed
exactly
to
what
be.
I'm
Okay.
saying. I'll come back now.
Well done. Those are great opening statements. Thank you very much.
Buzz boost.
So the vote now, as in a debate, and we have to time you guys now so that it's fair. We didn't actually set the rules of engagement at the beginning. So Divo, you have you have, let's say, 3 minutes to attack her points. So now her points now, and then vice versa, 3 minutes.
I don't even have more than 1 minute.
Ah, you do, man.
You
No,
do.
there's always fueling.
Don't worry,
Yeah,
we
you
already
do.
have comments coming
I told
through.
you I'm on
And we
the
already have
side.
people.
Don't worry,
No,
there'll
we
be
have people
calls.
on
There
your
are calls and
side.
messages. Hold
We
on.
already have people on the both side as well. So, online as well, on
Yeah.
YouTube as well.
Yes.
People don't didn't you debate in school? How can you be defeated?
I'm Sarudin. I told
Yeah.
you.
All right, guys, we're back in 6, 5, 4, 3 seconds. Glad to know you're there with us. Thank you so much for tuning in to Smooth 98.1. You're listening to Smooth Breakfast with Ayo Mario Esse.
And Valentine Ogo, good morning.
Good morning. For the big debate conversation inside Lagos Talks 91 today, should terrorists be pardoned and rehabilitated or made to pay for their crimes? Divo Korea and Oyemi Aderibigbe are analysts and co-debaters. All right, Divo, please go ahead and make your statement, or rather, make your case.
Okay, like I mentioned, the amnesty granted to insurgents is a counter-insurgency tactic, and it's not an absolute strategy. So it's unfair to say that the government, why should the government grant amnesty to all the insurgents? No, they're not granting amnesty to all insurgents. They're using it alongside counter-terrorism, which is where the kinetic efforts of all-on attacks are going. But like they have seen, that despite the amount spent, despite the attacks that have taken place, it has not been as successful. The insurgents seem to be breeding and growing faster than even the government is able to meet up. And as you can see, from what started in the northeast, it has stretched as far as the north central into the north west, as well as even down south into the middle belt, etc. and co. And in my words, it is safe to literally call the insurgents and the bandits all in the same. Okay. However, most people would argue that amnesty is not something you just grant when the war is still on. It should be granted, and this is what I believe, after the war or some level of peace has been achieved. Okay, so to quickly bring in some level of peace among those that you were trying to address. Now, that's why I keep saying that there's a timeline set for it. The rehabilitation, the de-radicalization that takes place is also is not an end to itself. The people who are rehabilitated are also meant to be productive citizens in the community, as well as even support the efforts in even bringing other insurgents down. Now, has the government implemented this properly? That is what is yet to be seen. But like I said, as a tool in the many aspects that the government will use in trying to quell insurgency in the country, it should be applied judiciously within a proper timeline and identifiable. So those who come in should be identified. There should be a database of those who have been brought on board so that we all know them, not that they are de-radicalized, granted this amnesty, and before we know it, they fall back into their old ways.
To clarify the situation before you hear me speak, I'd like to, just establish the fact that the effect of a pardon is to make the offender a new man, otherwise regarded in legal terms, novus homo, to acquit him of all corporal penalties and forfeitures annexed to the offense pardoned. Based on that allusion, right? You see that a lot of people would say, "Oh no, you shouldn't pardon them because they did the crime." But also taking note of the fact that some of them were taken against their will. Some of those terrorists that are so-called are victims of terrorism in the first place.
Yeah, so I like the fact that you put that context in, because when you say pardon, amnesty, clemency, you're saying that this person is free of guilt, not even that there's a record of it and you're forgiven,
and even their names will not be published.
You've taken the person out of that. You've erased the history for that person, right? My question is more of the justice issue, right? Because when you humanize criminals and dehumanize victims, across board. There's an issue, and that's the trend that we see. We have every time it becomes a question of, oh, what do they do to the Boko Haram insurgents or all of that? There's the humanization of them, but you dehumanize the people in the IDP camps because there's no restitution for them. There's no recourse, there's no rehabilitation system for them. If there was, right, if you saw government giving that same response to restitute those who have been hurt by Boko Haram, then you can say, okay, it's a holistic agenda that works. You have dehumanized the victims, kept them in camps that are not even fit for animals in many cases. You have people who and even I mean, if not for CSO interventions in many cases, many of these IDPs would be totally camps would be totally unsustainable. They are living in dehumanizing conditions. There's no strategy to restitute them and bring them to their own place or restore them. Then you sit and you say the response that is appropriate is that criminals be humanized and made good, right? So the government is taking up their crimes and making them good. Is that the response that, because we have to balance this conversation, if that's the response that you see in every other place where there is some form of implosion, you would say that, okay, it makes sense. But you see government going with state actors, going in force of immense, I don't even know what to say. There were over 115 extrajudicial killings in the East that were, quote unquote, attributed to state actors. That same force of action for crimes that are not, when you put them on the scale of things, they're not even, they've not been characterized as terrorism just yet, right? So these are the issues. And that's why for me, justice is the first question before you even start talking about all this strategy.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Divo. Thank you very much, Oyeyemi. They've made their points. They presented their case to you, our listeners. And now it's time to open the phone lines and take your comments in terms of what they have presented. It's the big debate here on Smooth 98.1, Lagos Talks 981. We're debating this morning on whether terrorists should be given amnesty, that is, be pardoned and rehabilitated, or have to pay for their crimes.
Hello, good morning. Good morning. Saji? Welcome.
Saji, where are you calling from, please? Fantastic, thank you.
Please go ahead.
You need to define certain things. What is terrorism? What is prisoner of war? What is guerrilla warfare? When we talk concerning war is fought between countries or countries against countries because they have a principle. When we're talking of terrorism, we're talking of people naming people that are unarmed, are not even known to any act that compare to the act of war. And when we talk of guerrilla warfare, it's a war also. Then when you look at Boko Haram said they are fighting the aspect of Western education. Why don't you go with your family and not go to Western education or send them to Quranic school? Now, let's talk about the aspect of these herdsmen. They continue naming, destroying people's farm, destroying people, hurting them, massacring them, raping our women. Is that right? Is that an aspect that you now said you want to grant amnesty? We remember the time of Major General Buhari. He said they are killing his people. How are they killing your people? And we know about soldiers trying to fight these insurgents. And we heard what he said concerning some other aspects of our people from the other divide. Why are we saying this? We should be able to make a division between war and terrorism.
All right.
We can't say you want to give them radical them also and bring them into the Nigerian army. Is it right? It is not whatsoever.
Right.
They are to be brought before justice, and justice measured to them. We can't just wake up one day and say some people have been like what Oyeyemi said. He said, have they restituted, or the people in the ID keep camp, have they been restituted?
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you
you.
so much, Saji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Soji. We're going to have to time our callers. Thank you so much for your excellent points, Soji. But for our next caller, you have a minute. Good morning. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hello, Chika. You have 1 minute. Good morning. Good morning. Please go ahead.
Well, saying that Nigeria is a sovereign state. And any group that tries up to challenge the wills of a sovereign state shouldn't be in any way bring to the conversation as maybe being pardoned or being reintegrated into society. The truth of the matter is that the Boko Haram insurgents or the terrorists, be it bandits or whatever they may be, they've actually caused havoc to the Nigerian state. I mean, look at the shame that they brought us in 2014 where they actually attacked a UN building in Abuja. Do we also begin to further the conversation as to whether those kind of people should be pardoned? Let's look at the pains, the grief that they've actually brought on Nigerians due to their activities, their nefarious activities in these past years. As far as I'm concerned, we can pretend all that we want. But the truth of the matter is that we are not yet ready to fight this insurgents. If this insurgents, I mean, we shouldn't be talking about absorbing them or actually maybe
All right.
groups that their crimes have not actually been as heinous as these people. And yet we saw the pressure and the actions or the force that the government is using against them.
All right, Chika.
Thank you, Chika. Your 1 minute is up. Thank you very much. Take on our next caller. Good morning. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Welcome.
Hello, Henry. You have 1 minute. Please go.
Thank you. No, I think as a master principle for me, as no is
Hello, Henry. Are you there? Please move. Oh,
All right.
maybe your network is wonky. Just move location so we can hear you clearly.
I will take some comments off from our WhatsApp platform. We had this from Tajuddin Alimosho. He says, a leopard in a goat skin is still a leopard. An eye for an eye once established is a rule that will last till the end of time.
Sean here says low risk, repentant terrorists. As far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing. No one starts out as a terrorist captain or shakal. They grow through the ranks. This means every one of them is a potential terrorist. This amnesty and pardon needs to either cut across all perceived terror groups or not at all. You cannot pardon Boko Haram or bandits, but we never hear pardon for Masab or IPOB constituents. They cannot stand. A quick reference to a story here, actually a story that we took yesterday, a report from Premium Times. Here, the army spokesman Onyema Nwachukwu stated on Tuesday in a statement in Abuja saying that debunking the reports that the force was making arrangements to free 2 senior repentant terrorists. He said that's false. So that establishes the fact that they're not going to be pardoning those that are up the ranks, but those, the menial ones are rather.
All right.
Menials.
Thank you very much. We have this from Prince. Prince has a lengthy comment. He says, first, do we have an efficient judicial system to prosecute the large numbers of surrender terrorists, thousands of them? Focusing only on prosecuting and imprisoning suspected terrorists may be insufficient to prevent people who have committed terrorist acts from doing so again. Also, after they have served a prison term, what next for them going back into the society? UN Security Council and General Assembly have called on member states to develop and implement comprehensive and tailored strategies for the prosecution, rehabilitation, and reintegration, that's PRR, of terrorism suspects, including foreign terrorist fighters and members of their families. All right, Prince, thank you very much.
Let's go to the phone lines, 014489981, and please feel free, AME, to react to either call and Devo as well.
Good morning. What's your name and where are you calling from? All right. Thank you very much. We need to go on a break now. When we come back, we continue with our telephone calls, messages, and of course, if our debaters have anything to add to the comments that have come in thus far.
My name is IBK Spaceship Boy.
So, can we take the route of balance now?
Yes.
Okay.
Huh?
No, let's do balance as closing statements. Yes. Let's take one of few calls so we can begin closing statements at 45.
Okay.
Yeah, 45 past.
Future forward banking.
Okay, well, thank you.
We did.
Come back.
What does future forward banking
We
mean
did.
to you?
I was on the announcement.
Speed,
Yeah.
innovation,
Thank you.
Remind them. Thank you.
convenience, lifestyle goals, or just simply getting service that is designed just for you. Yeah, we thought you might like all of that and more.
You know that always comes up.
But
You can't give an
yeah, no, you
imbalance
can.
approach to
And on this particular issue, it's a conflated one, right? So there are detentions that are strictly political,
yes.
right? Influenced by people who want to frustrate, they've seen an opportunity and they're using it. Then there is also the economic issue as well, right? This is a region that is largely unproductive.
We're back. Please hold that
Okay.
thought and share.
Yeah.
Please bring us back. 12 seconds. Mics are up. Studio's live. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
If you're just tuning in, this is Lagos Talks 91, part of Smooth Breakfast Show. I'm Ayo Myro Essing.
My name is Valentine Ohu.
This morning, we're having what we call the big debate. It's the very first one in this edition, and we hope to have this every Wednesday from today. And today's conversation is around terrorism, amnesty or not. In particular, should terrorists be made to pay for their crimes, or perhaps, on the other hand, should they be pardoned and rehabilitated and reintegrated to society? Debating these points, we have Oyeyemi Aderibigbe and Divo Okore. We've also opened the phone lines following their opening statements and counter arguments to have you give your thoughts on this conversation.
That number is 0144899881. You can as well send messages through WhatsApp to 0809 444
We're streaming on YouTube as well. Good morning, what's your name and where are you calling from? Good morning, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hello, Emmanuel. All right, please share in 1 minute.
I have two issues with one is the message of the pattern or whatever is done about enhanced terrorism. I quickly looked up treasonable felony on Google and it has quite an interesting definition. People oppose the sovereignty of a state by declaring their own territory in the sovereign state is supposed to be a crime. And so, what are the metrics with which these people will be assessed and evaluated to have, repented of their actions? I don't know if these metrics can be made public so that everyone can assess that the job has been done properly and these people are truly repentant. If it's going to be based on somebody's judgment, it's going to be false. The second point issue I have with it is are these same measures being applied across the board, across every other place where there is an impression that the sovereignty of the nation is being threatened? I think Yemi has already made mention of other instances around the country where there is a perceived threat to the sovereignty of the nation, and we don't see the same pardoning and other actions being taken in those areas. So these are the concerns I have. This week, as many other initiatives of government, the metrics and the decisions and thought processes behind these decisions are never really clear.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel.
Sorry.
Thank you, Manuel. Your time is up. Thanks. Good morning. What's your name and where are you calling from, please? All right, Henry. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
So I was saying, low risk and violence extremist offenders should have a pathway back to society, really, as a matter of principle. Obviously, Oyemi has spoken to the justice concern that perhaps if we are opening this pathway, there might be no justice for victims of their crimes, right? But let's remember that the current concern that she raised, particularly with the IDP camps, is not a government policy. It's an outgrowth of incompetent implementation of how the IDPs the camps should be made. So it's not as if there's a deliberate government policy to make them feel not part of or not worthy of society. But as a government policy, we should ensure that low risk violent offenders should have pathway back to society. I think that should be our policy. Obviously, the parameters will differ, the nuances will be different from the particular their level of involvement in terrorist acts. And then, just as the last person has spoken, there should be, equality in if they are going to implement the policy across board. It doesn't matter if you are from the south or if you are from the west or from the north. There should be equality of application if they are going to make that policy. But as a matter of policy, I think that is something we should do going forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Henry Manuel.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate that. And I'm going by the calls we've taken so far. There's a stark comparison between how the government treats the goose and how it treats the gander. A clear example: Shori, Nnamdi Kanu, Sunday Bo, just to mention a few. But what are your thoughts regarding the statements made so far?
I honestly think that the conversation around amnesty starts after the justice consideration has been clearly delineated. And what that means is that you're not saying to them that, oh, come and what's it called? Come, we would rehabilitate you. You are low risk. Someone said the metrics, right? Even how are they characterized? These associated family members and then a mix of victims and the main Boko Haram actors who say, even what does it mean to de-radicalize them? What does it mean to reintegrate them to society? Who is tracking the trends? Because we've done it before. I think that's where my own dividing line is. We've done this thing before. What was the result? Where is the effect of the amnesty granted previously? Where did it take us? What did it buy for us? Did it buy us time to re-strategize? Did it buy us a change in the action, or did it implode the entire system? Right? You have, and let's also understand that there are different levels of response. So there is the federal government response, there's the state government response. There are disparities between how states are thinking about the issue. You have Governor Matawale of Zamfara sitting down with Gumi, going to do interviews in the zone and saying, you know what, let's bring them back and all of that. And you have, on the 2nd of July, the president said there is no amnesty. It's not possible. Everybody who's guilty of terrorism will face the law. That 2nd of July this month. And what is today? Today is the 10th of August, 11th of August. An officer who is appointed at the at the displeasure of the president, definitely a representative of the president, is saying, oh no, we are going to grant amnesty to these people. Where those are my issues. Like how are you saying, oh, justice first, and then 1 month after amnesty second? There is no strategy there, and once there is no strategy that properly positions justice as the center of the conversation, you are not doing anything. That's my own view.
I have a quick question. Does the president have the exclusive right to exercise pardoning power as a constitutional privilege?
It flows from the president.
Okay.
It flows from the president. It flows from the governor. So, and if you have a power, you can delegate that power, within the ambit of the law. But the power, section 175 and 212 of the Constitution, vest them in the president and the governors of states.
Thank you.
Thank you. Devote your closing statement, please.
Closing statement. One, I think everything has been said lies with what I had said from the beginning in terms of the implementation is where the problem lies. If you don't implement it judiciously, if you don't implement it transparently, you're going to run into problems. It's a tool out of many. As you remember, and those who are granted amnesty, unlike a clemency where everything is wiped off, they still have a responsibility to the states, okay? It's usually set clear and safe. To a large extent, many do believe that the amnesty that was granted to the militants in the Niger Delta proved effective because we've had some relative peace there for some years. Unlike what is going on now with the insurgents, the Boko Haram insurgents, we've not seen the same level of effectiveness or delivery of peace as it should bring about. Well, what that simply means is that government needs to review the implementation of its counter-insurgency techniques to see what to pull out or to see what to do better, or else at the end of the day, we will have a bigger monster than we have already.
Well, can you compare both Niger Delta and what's happening in the north? Because Niger Delta militants were largely destroying oil installations, as
Yes.
opposed to the terrorists who are killing and maiming individuals
I mean,
and kidnapping.
And there was a justice cause at the center of that conversation in the
Yes,
Niger Delta,
yes.
because it was agitation for life, right? It was an agitation to restore life. The people were actually being destroyed and killed and harmed by the economic activities, and the only place they could go to was to the government. So it was, a lot of people have problems characterizing that as terrorism because it was some sort of civil disobedience, which is a human right, right? And so there's all of that energy that we also need to put in place, right? Put it proper. We need to characterize things properly, right? That's even one part of the conversation. There's a lot of politics that has flowed into the conversation that has dismembered things. Everyone is a terrorist now if you even speak in many cases, right? I mean, not just by government. I mean, in there is no clarity, even just the way things are reported. That all those things they got as Devo was making that point, and I really, really think that that's where we should sit. The conversation is counterinsurgency has to be well thought out, well implemented. You have to know what's working and what's not. So it has to be evidence based. You can't just be making policies and move. You're moving in motion. If you're driving a car and your gear should act up, you have to have a response to that. If your horn should stop working, there should be a response to that, right? So there must be calculated responses to the unforeseen, to the scene. I'm not totally against, now we've come to the end, right? Yeah. I'm not totally against amnesty. I think that is a non-kinetic response that has worked in different places. You've seen Israel, you've seen Palestine, you've seen the peace deals that they've had. Even when there were points for agitation, the peace deals took them forward and made them move, so it's possible, right? But it has to be well done. It has to consider the justice question and the people, the impact on the victims as well. And it must be done across board. We need to stop politicizing terrorism.
And on that note, we say a very big thank you to our debaters. Thank you so much, Devo Korean. Thank you, Oyeyemi Adewiwigbe. A big thanks to all our listeners who called in and sent in messages as well. And all those who are listening on YouTube. We do this every Wednesday. We're going to be doing this every Wednesday in terms of the big debate here on Lagos Talks 981.
There are a few messages we have to, share before we go. Lad says terrorists must first pay for their crimes, then they can be rehabilitated. They should never be let off without paying for their crimes. And he adds, millions food soldiers do most of the dirty work. It's ignorant to think that because they are the bottom of the terrorism food chain, that they are less harmful than the generals. As far as I'm concerned, pardoning them is abominable.
All right, thank you very much. And finally, Noni says, good morning all, please. The world needs more OAMEs. In relation to amnesty, please, will there be some kind of meeting between perpetrators and victims, or are we just going to pay them to keep out of trouble via training? Will their newfound skills be used to rebuild the communities they destroyed? Am I the only one to remember the threat of a rehabilitated Tom Polo to return to the creeks a few years ago? Is that the kind of amnesty and rehabilitation we're talking about?
Devoker is a public analyst. Oyemi Emmanuel Aderibigbe is a lawyer with prowess in ethics, compliance, corporate law, and employment law. Thank you so much to both of you for making this conversation actually gracing this meeting edition.
Yes, it is.
Thank you
You're
for
part of
having
history.
us.
Thank you very much for coming on board.
Thank you.
Stay with us on Smooth Breakfasts with Ayo Myro Essay.
And Valentine Oho.
Good morning.
Wake up.
Okay.
Thank you,
so
YouTube
much.
fam. We love you. Thank you so much.
The best of everything in the morning.
Please give me my life back. I hated this.